right. I think in this moment in time, it's probably important for me to say, first of all, that the giant we are about to discuss, who brought us so much joy in this country, is the son of immigrants. The son of immigrants. His family left the Russian Empire at that time, before they were the Soviet Union. And I think the mom was in an area that we now call Ukraine. And the Russian Empire had some fairly anti-Jewish policies and procedures, and they felt that it was inhospitable, so they immigrated from Russia, the Russian Federation or Empire, whatever you want to call it, to England and settled in London, where they set up a tailor shop and stayed there for many, many years and had 4 kids, and then later all boys. And then they immigrated to America. The older son was the first to come, and then mom, pop, and then 3 younger boys came over. Their family name is Getz. Now, the person we're going to talk about is Stanley Getz, who was born in 1927 in Philadelphia. So he was the first native-born American in this family. They grew up in Philadelphia for the most part, but when the Depression hit, they moved to New York just to have more opportunity for some financial stability. And that's where they stayed in the Bronx, Brooklyn area. I think young Stanley was quite the student, always academically at the top of his class. He ended up graduating at the top of his class. He did have an affinity for musical instruments and played several, but he did not settle on the saxophone until he was a teenager, when his father actually bought him one as a gift, and he fell in love. By 16, he is playing with the legendary trombonist, Mr. Jack Teagarden, at 16. And Jack, of course, treated him like his own son, because going into the places Jack was going to, as a 16-year-old, you need to have a protector. And Jack was that protector for young Stan Getz. This led to other gigs with bands, primarily big bands of that era. Tommy Dorsey's band, Benny Goodman's band, Lionel Hampton, Nat King Cole, and eventually the Woody Herman band, where he was a member of the Four Brothers. That was the strange saxophone section. 3 tenors and a baritone. And he had some outstanding solos with that band, and that is when his name came to the fore and his stock began to rise with that Woody Herman band. And he, as the big band era started to die out a little bit, primarily because of the extreme weight of trying to finance such a big organization. He, like most other people, moved to smaller groups, quintets, quartets, that kind of thing, and played with all of the bad cats of the day, whether it's Mingus or Miles or Dizzy or Max. When the beboppers were happening, Stan Getz was right there playing with the best of them. And somehow, this relationship with the black musicians of the day caused him to do something that a lot of black musicians were doing in the late 40s and early 50s. He left America and moved to Scandinavia, where he continued to work primarily with African-American musicians who were also expatriates, jazz musicians who simply had their fill of America. and had settled in Europe for a time. And he played in many of these groups with the legends of the bebop and hard bop era, and very successfully so. Good record sales, had a good life going, and again, his stock is going up as a player. Matter of fact, his nickname was The Sound, because he was a Lester Young worshiper. He loved Lester's sound, Lester's style, and he emulated that to the best if he could, and that mellow sound is what gave him his signature, the sound of Stan Getz. Now, in 1961, he returned to America. Maybe it's the beginning of the civil rights era. I don't know what it was, but he came back about that time and started to reestablish himself. About that time, there was an import coming into American culture, particularly music, and that is the influence of bossa nova. The music of Brazil. And of course, he is starting to go, okay, I like this, and he started making music that originated in Brazil. Several different recordings, and each one more successful than the last. And finally, he struck gold when he met Astrid Gilberto and her husband, and Antonio Jobim, and they put together that great album in about 1963, 1964, that produced the second million-selling record for him, The Girl from Ipanema. Let us not forget that his first million-selling record, the first gold record, was Desafinado, which is also a Brazilian tune. So here he is in the mid-60s, and he's starting to have great popularity, gold records, Grammy nominations, and winning some Grammys with the music of Brazil. Now, things are going pretty well with this relationship between the Gilbertos and Stan Getz until it was discovered that the relationship between Stan Getz and Astrid Gilberto went beyond, how shall we say, the confines of professionalism, and had gotten a little bit personal. And of course, this was not very pleasing to the husband, and so that relationship ended quite suddenly, at least for a while. But you know how it is, sometimes money can heal even the deepest wounds. So a few years later, they are back collaborating on some projects, but I would imagine that there's a little bit more protection from the kind of events they had in their previous projects. Stan Getz probably brought more joy and more prominence to jazz and the music of Brazil in this period than any other single artist, and was richly rewarded both with the record sales and the critical acclaim that came with Grammy nominations and Grammy awards. At some point, he ends up back in California. He's teaching at Sanford in the jazz program as a beginning professor, and is continuing to play and write and do all the things that he did. And he gets into the new thing, the fusion. So he does this album that people went, no, no, no. And he goes, yes, yes, yes. He hired some hot young cats, man. Stanley Clarke and Chick Corea and cats like that to help him record an album called Captain Marvel. and it was fusion, straight up jazz rock. And of course, his purist fans were like, oh, no, no, no. But Stan's like, why not? These cats can play. This is what's going on. Let me add my signature to it. And of course, Captain Marvel is one of the better examples of the collaboration between the rock idiom and the jazz idiom in terms of a fusion. He lived a very, very long and happy life. He died of cancer, which was definitely not a pretty thing for the people that were around him and saw him suffer through that. But through it all, he maintained his positive attitude about life and beauty that he had expressed so eloquently through his saxophone for all those years, regardless to whether it was the big band or the bebop or the hard bop or Brazilian jazz or fusion. Stan Getz did it all. He remained vibrant, he remained creative, and he maintained the sound. So please, go out and listen to a little Stan Getz, and you will hear not just the beauty of his sound, but the beauty of his soul. Thank you so very much for listening.